Hey there, bibliophiles and those raising bibliophiles. Without ratings and warning labels, finding which books are appropriate for your children to read is like navigating wild terrain without a map and a compass. I don't know about you, but I have been burned more than once handing my child a book that I thought was clean and appropriate. I'm a fellow mom, educator, reading specialist, and literary enthusiast trying to find great books for my children and yours to read. If you're looking for a real review from a real mom with a biblical worldview, then welcome and enjoy this week's book review. This week's book review is going to be a little bit on the longer side. If you have been following me for a while, then you know that I did the Journey to Impossible Places by Ted Dekker and H.R. Hutzel in 2024. And so I have finished the companion series to that particular series, which includes 3 other books. The book reviews that I did for Impossible Journey series did appear each in their own individual week, but this week's going to be a little bit longer because I am excited to be able to give you all 3 books in one video. And so hopefully that'll be helpful to you as parents to kind of get that all in one lump sum. If you have not looked at the Journey to Impossible Places, I encourage you to go to holdingsteadfastreaders.com. And you will find under book reviews, there is a special page that is just for books that are in a series. And you will find the Journey to Impossible Places in its own kind of group there. And I will probably provide these ones also in both places. I'm going to separate them and put them all under the one. So hopefully either way you find it, it'll be helpful for you as parents. So with that being said, the World of Impossible Things is the companion to the Journey to Impossible Places. And again, Ted Dekker and H.L. Hutzel are the authors of this series. It opens about 1 month after their return home. Michael and Charlie are not only brothers now, but they're close friends. Unfortunately, Tyler now feels that he is on the outs and he cannot understand the sudden change in Michael and Charlie's relationship. As a result, Tyler is brooding, and it's only made worse by his solitude and the mysterious purple fruit that he seems to have brought home from the island. Before I jump into more information about this book and the other books in the series, I do just want to read a little bit of the opening chapter. I'm not going to read the entire chapter. I'm going to skip around just a little bit, but I just want to give you an idea of the writing style of this particular series and just sort of the intrigue that's given in chapter 1. Michael wielded an imaginary sword, demonstrating to his twin brother Charlie how he defeated Milo in their fencing bout earlier in the day. He arced his arm through the air, adding a flick of the wrist and flourish. He'd never actually executed this move in a match, but imagined he would once he'd mastered the new sport. He shuffled across the floor of Charlie's bedroom, jabbing and then spinning on his heel. Charlie stifled a laugh behind his hand, trying not to wake the other children, or worse, give away the fact that neither he nor Michael were abiding by their 10 o'clock bedtime. Michael jabbed again, grinning at the sound of his brother's laughter as he narrated the exaggerated match. Then I did a backflip, stuck the landing, and lunged. A backflip? Charlie tossed a pillow across the room from where he sat cross-legged on the bed. The thick, downy lump hit Michael in the face with a dull thud. "You're forgetting I was there to witness the entire match." Michael dropped to the ground, bursting with uncontrollable laughter. He buried his face in the pillow to muffle the sound. After catching his breath, he climbed onto the bed beside his brother and leaned back against the headboard, holding his stomach. He'd never laughed as hard as he did when he was with Charlie. He could scarcely believe he'd once hated the boy. Of course, that was before they'd realized they were twin brothers from a mystical portal world called Lumina. I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit. Michael pressed his lips together, overcome by a recurring sense of guilt. "Charlie, I'm so sorry for the way I treated you before." "Stop." Charlie placed his other hand over Michael's and pressed it tight against his chest. "I forgave you. You know that. You don't have to apologize anymore." "I know, but..." "No." Charlie shook his head. "I forgave you," he repeated. Michael sighed. "I know." Charlie held his gaze. "But you need to forgive yourself." Michael nodded. "You're right." A smile pulled at Charlie's lips. "Brother of my blood." Michael returned the smile and responded, "Brother of the light," completing the phrase they'd repeated each evening since returning to the orphanage. Michael wrapped his twin brother in a tight embrace, then ruffled his curls. See you in a few hours. And then Michael's going to be trying to walk back to his room, but he's going to see Tyler. Oh, hey, Tyler, Michael said in a low voice. The blonde-haired boy sat rigidly straight in the high-back chair, eyes glued ahead but not on him. After several long seconds, Tyler dragged his gaze to meet Michael's. Sleep over with baby brother again? He asked in a mocking tone. Michael stiffened. What are you doing up? Tyler shrugged. Why do you care? Michael clenched his jaw. Come on, Tyler. How long are we going to keep doing this? Doing what? Tyler said. His voice dripped with disdain. Michael sucked in a deep breath through his nostrils and tried to compose himself. But it was getting harder to ignore Tyler's attitude and snide remarks. He'd been acting strange since their return to the orphanage, and not in a good way. While all the other kids had returned positively transformed after their plane crash and experiences on the mystical island, Tyler had not. Then again, Tyler did have an experience on the island that no one else could relate to. Well, almost no one. So that gives you sort of an idea of the intrigue to draw readers into that first book in this new set of series that companions with the Journey to Impossible Places. So after Michael and Tyler have this sort of late night confrontation, Michael's unsure what to say to Tyler, and he doesn't want to say the wrong thing. Meanwhile, Tyler knows exactly what he plans to do. Tyler has actually been listening to a voice from the darkness who goes by the name of Prince of Chaos. And after the conversation with Michael, he decides to poison Charlie, causing him to fall into a coma. Meanwhile, he and Michael use the fruit as a portal back to the island where they end up in a land known as Raven. Raven is where the rest of the conflict and the plot of the story is really established. Tyler uses Michael to release the spirit of chaos, and Michael briefly ends up back in Lumina, where he discovers that he must stop Tyler from extinguishing the three divine flames. In this portion of the series, Michael is not successful in that endeavor, and he's left trapped in a dome of ice at the first location at the end of book 4. Tyler is already escaping with the ember of the first extinguished flame. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Sarah and Milo, along with Mr. Abbott, have tried to return to the mysterious island, but a dome of ice is currently surrounding the island, and without a way to currently get through it unharmed, they're unable to do anything. Readers who enjoyed the first 3 books in this series are definitely going to enjoy the intrigue of book 4, and they're going to quickly devour the entire series. One of the great aspects of this story in book 4 is that Michael does have empathy for Tyler, and he does recognize that he has to find his own way to the light. Tyler is looking for affirmation and love, and he gets that from the false prince. There are so many great biblical themes and tie-ins that families and readers can definitely discuss. And it's a book series that if you have some older elementary, maybe early middle school, and you guys do family reads, I definitely encourage you to check out the series and see if that's something that you guys want to add to your to-read list. Check out my full written review. You're going to see some particular quotes and mentions specifically to the book that'll give you a little more detail about the book itself, or some great quotes and things that stand out. I really enjoyed book 4 in this series, and I definitely think it's going to appeal to anyone that's read the other books, are going to be really hooked and wanting to get the rest. So that's book 4, and book 4 was titled The Legend of the Flames. And now I'm going to move on to book 5 in the series, and it is called The Curse of the Ember. So book 5 opens with Michael realizing that Tyler is ahead of him and that he's already extinguished the first divine flame. However, now he himself, they are trapped in a wall of ice that is actually mirroring what's taking place on Earth with Sarah and Milo. Michael is soon reminded that he himself needs to follow the light, which eventually does lead him out where they are stuck. And so there are solar flies in the story that are able to cut through the veil, and that was keeping him inside, and he's able to move on. So once they're out, they set sail with the new coordinates leading to the second flame. They can only hope that something is going to happen that will help them to arrive first. Arriving safely is actually far from smooth sailing for them because they have to battle sea dragons in order to reach the island. Bryn and Michael, as well as other sailors, are severely injured. in this endeavor, but they do manage to get a hold of the second divine flame before Tyler does. Rusty, who is the ship's captain with Michael, is confronted by Michael and Bryn about how he was able to afford all the gold for the voyage. And Rusty shares that he sold his home and everything he owns. So a quote from the story that sort of Rusty's a great character. He says, "Because I believe in you, lad. I've spent my entire life chasing the flames that I believe to be the greatest treasure of all. And when you believe something that deeply, you go all in. There's no turning back for me." And that's on page 103. So while Michael is preparing to fight sea dragons, the story does shift, and it's following Tyler and his crew on the Black Dahlia. Unfortunately, the crew is severely sick, and Admiral Tomlin chooses to land at a nearby island for healing. The island is not friendly to Tomlin and his crew. The reader will soon find out that Tomlin stole the Black Dahlia from Captain Dutchman. And once Dutchman is aware of his presence on the island, Tomlin and his men, Tyler included, they are all taken prisoner. Tyler recognizes that time's of the essence, so he chooses to play both sides. After escaping the prison with a little bit of trickery, he's taken to speak with the Dutchman. In this meeting, Tyler convinces him to come to the ship in order to bear witness to the ember of the first flame, and he's really hoping to entice the Dutchman into helping him fulfill his mission. However, the Dutchman touches the ember, and because of that, he becomes miraculously healed. And this is to the horror of the Prince of Chaos, who seems to really almost possess Tyler's body in order to kill the Dutchman. Tyler is horrified by the events, but he does continue to do the bidding of the Prince of Chaos. In the end, Tomlin is released and the mission is really back on track. On page 78 and 79, you're going to get the details of the Dutchman's death, and you're going to see sort of, I encourage you parents to kind of check that out and make sure it's not too much for your readers. It would be worth reviewing. Tyler apologizes that he didn't have a choice in killing him, but the Dutchman's final words are, quote, "You always have a choice," end quote, page 79. Back on Earth, Sarah's falling apart due to her worry over Charlie and her anxiety. She's ultimately learning that you can't fight fear with fear, and that's a quote on page 146. Milo's concerned, but not to the extent that Sarah is. The world is now watching this anomaly, which is what they're calling the island, and the children are called to speak with experts and the President of the United States. The world is worried, and the U.S. President sends missiles into the dome covering the mystical island. However, this seems to anger the island, and it proceeds to grow and expand, taking ships and men with it. The story ends with the children needing to be evacuated as it grows closer to the private island that they're currently residing at. Mr. Abbott in this portion of the story plays a much bigger role than he did in the first 4 books. He is an endearing man who truly cares for the children. In trying to calm Sarah, he makes a comment about his boring children. He says, quote, "Man, did I ever get fooled. Here I thought I'd adopted all these extraordinary children just to find out they're plain old boring kind. Yep, just another boring adventure with my 2 normal kids," end quote. And then the last part of Tyler and Michael's story in this portion of the series ends with Tyler getting a hold of the second ember from Michael. Meanwhile, Michael's ship and crew are struggling after being attacked by cannon fire. So if your readers enjoyed the first portion of the series, they're definitely going to enjoy the second installment, and book 5 definitely leads them wanting to know more and running for book 6. And so it really leaves the readers with the questions of, like, can Charlie be saved? Can Michael reach Tyler with the light, or is it going to be too late? And now that brings us to book 6 in the series, which is Treasure Beyond World's End. And so the race is on to get the final flame. However, Michael's group has a ship to repair. Tyler has a mutiny on his hands, and back on Earth, Sarah tries to stop a nuclear missile from launching on the anomaly. Meanwhile, Charlie is in a coma, but is able to communicate with the sage, and he actually knows what's been going on this whole time. So in the 5th book, there's nothing mentioned about Charlie, no concern, but book 6 really opens, reminding the reader of Charlie and his predicament. But it's also setting the stage for his return. While he's in a coma, he's communicating with the sage, and in this chapter, the sage is reminding Charlie that quotes, "The light of God has no boundaries in whatever world you find yourself in," end quote, and that he needs to, quote, "trust Michael to find the light," end quote. And that's on page 7. Towards the end of the novel, Sarah, Milo, and Mr. Abbott are able to retrieve Charlie from the hospital. Despite the objections, since he's still in a coma, they bring him to the mysterious island that's surrounded by the dome. But crossing the barrier actually awakens Charlie, and he's able to create a portal that allows him briefly to encourage Michael. So this test is really on Michael. Michael repairs the shop. While they're doing that, they have more adventure than they were expecting. He and Bryn and a few of Rusty's crew venture on the island of the second flame to retrieve wood for the repairs. The crew members eat some mysterious fruit, and if you've been following the series, you know that that is not good. So this turns them against Michael and Bryn. Despite the attempts to kill them, Michael and Bryn are able to break through the darkness, and all's forgiven and ends well as they travel to the third destination. Tyler, meanwhile, has to deal with a mutinous crew who have a horrible rash causing boils. Tomlin turns the ship around, and once Tyler finds out, he turns the crew against Tomlin. However, that isn't his only problem. The daughter of the man Tyler killed in Book 5 has an entire fleet with her, and they are gaining on the Black Dahlia. Once close enough to the island, Tyler escapes the ship, and he makes it to the island undetected. Michael arrives at the first location of the third flame, but it's actually Tyler who has the means of opening the door. It is here that the final showdown happens as Michael attempts to thaw Tyler's heart and seek forgiveness for his own actions towards Tyler in the past that have contributed to the choices that he has made. Of course, it all ends well, but I don't want to give too much away about how it all comes together. There are some great quotes. We do see a bit of a budding crush between Bryn and Michael, so I do want to encourage you, again, parents, go to holdingsteadfastreaders.com to get just a little bit more info about that. And I do love the theme and the realization that you can't fight fear with fear, but on page 124 it says you have to fight fear with love. Overall, I really enjoyed the second installment to the Impossible Journey or Impossible Places series. I'm sure that if you have readers that have enjoyed the first set, they are definitely going to enjoy the second set. I know that my son was able to read through them in a matter of, I think maybe 2 days. He just couldn't put them down. He was super excited to get them. So parents, if you're looking for a great series that has biblical themes, biblical tie-ins, then I encourage you to check out the Impossible Places series. You can go back and see my earlier reviews for the Journey to Impossible Places. And then again, if your children really enjoyed that or you're wanting a little bit more, definitely check out the World of Impossible Things. And thank you for joining me for this week's book review. And I hope that you'll join me next week for another book review.